Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. A spectacular train fire lit up London's sky Sunday night, prompting many citizens to call 911. The massive fire was on a Canadian Pacific Kansas City freight train, causing about $35,000 in damage. So today I'm talking with London Free Press reporter Jennifer Bieman about the fire and the many questions still surrounding it. Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
We always love having you, of course. So let's just start with how this fire began. How was it spotted? Do we know where it was first seen? Because a lot of people called 911.
Yeah, it must have been quite the spectacle for Londoners. So, they started 911 started getting calls from people as it was an eastbound train coming in, and people were seeing it at Oxford and Cherry Hill, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the CP line kind of runs right through the core, down Richmond and Piccadilly. That's that line. So people
Okay.
started calling, and it was about like 10:45, and calls to emergency services were coming in. So the firefighters eventually they intercepted this flaming train, kind of at Waterloo and Pall Mall. It
Yeah.
was quite the thing. 5 cars. So yeah, definitely something people took note of, and they were all over social media. It was just lit up with all kinds of photos and pictures of this massive fire.
You can see the photos if you just go on X and look at it. Did the train engineers know it was on fire? Like this thing was just rolling along the tracks like a big long flame.
Well, certainly they would have figured it out pretty quickly.
Right.
And again, that'll probably be part of the investigation CP is doing to see, when exactly the train sort of figured out what was happening. There are train dispatchers too that communicate with trains on routes and things. So
Okay.
it'll be interesting to see sort of, when and exactly how. But yeah, they stopped it, and fire crews, but 25 firefighters came in. They used foam, and they used about 250 liters or 250,000 liters of water, something crazy like that, to get this thing doused. But yeah, it was quite the thing, and something we really haven't seen in London that I can recall in a really long time, like this sort of
I have never
scale of,
seen. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
I have never
yeah.
seen a train, and we have so many trains going through the city, as we all know. But I've never seen a fire like that. Do we know the cause of this yet? Do we have any idea?
So that's the $1 million question here, although it's certainly not anywhere close to $1 million damage on this thing. About
Mhm.
35,000 between the cargo on the train and then the cars itself, and a building that was damaged a little bit. But yeah,
Okay.
we really don't know so far. CP is kind of looking into it themselves. They've launched an investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board of Canada knows about this. They are aware. They're looking into it. It's not entirely clear if they themselves have launched an investigation yet, and they may or may not, depending on the circumstances of the fire. But really, there's a lot of questions about what exactly sparked this, and gosh, if it was something we can prevent in the future.
Of course. Then we want to know what are some common causes of train fires? I know in your reporting you did talk to some people about that, but I mean, what could have caused this, or maybe what has caused other train fires?
So I have learned so much about train fires. This was landed on my schedule yesterday to sort of look into it. And I've never really thought about trains catching fire before. Usually when we talk about train
Hmm.
incidents, it's like, they derail or they hit something, or there's level crossing incidents. Like those are the kind of things we think about. Turns out these things are not that uncommon. There's about, 46 or so in Canada that the Transportation Safety Board reported in 2022. And it was about the same the year before. And those are things that involve rolling stock, which is kind of the industry name for train cars. So these things do kind of happen. Also, there's lots of things that happen on trains. There's hot metal, there's trail, like the little metal wheels on the tracks, they kind of
Yeah,
heat up, and there's friction and things. There's lots of ways that, potential ignition sources, certainly. So,
sure.
yeah, it's definitely an unusual thing we saw locally, but not unusual in the big picture, I guess you'd say.
So you said about 46 a year. It's about on average maybe one a week.
Yeah, that's basically it for sure. And that's kind of the thing with, train cars that have caught fire. That doesn't even include fires sparked by trains, like sort of bushfires near the right of way. Those are kind of itemized separately by the Transportation Safety Board. So there is certainly
Okay.
a fire risk on trains that maybe we don't always think about.
No, I certainly haven't, that's for sure. Um, your story says that the number of train fires in Canada has increased since 2012. Is there any reason for that, or do we have any idea?
Certainly not sure. The Transportation Safety Board report doesn't really go into the why, but it,
Okay.
it was, kind of a lower number back in 2012, and then it kind of went up into the mid 30s, and then we were now at about 46 or so in 2022 and 2021. The number of incidents also kind of remained steady over that time period. So, it really could be any reason for it. Some of the causes of train fires are, like I said, like overheating things or friction or hot
Mhm.
metal that's kind of heating up and igniting. There's potential for sparks. There's just, even the expert I spoke to yesterday had said if exhaust on a train is not kept up uh, perfectly, there can be sparks that come out of that and ignite as well. So
Okay.
it's just sort of really anyone's guess why these things happen. And luckily we had firefighters there that were really able to extinguish it before it got really out of control. And the fire or the train crew here decoupled the burning cars from the others too, which was like really quick thinking, a really standard
Yeah.
operating procedure. So it could have been a lot worse or a lot more dangerous, but for the
So
quick thinking of people.
absolutely. So we should say that nobody was hurt in this fire, right? There's no injuries.
Yep.
Okay. And what was this train hauling? Like what was in it?
So the train cars that caught fire were carrying old rail ties. So old wooden rail ties, which, I think anyone can imagine would definitely be something that could light and catch fire.
Mhm.
The rest of the train, there were a few cars that they were empty, kind of hazardous material cars. So there's certainly like potential for residue in there, but they weren't, filled with anything
Okay.
dangerous. But yeah, that was sort of what was on the train from what we understand.
And how long did it take the fire crews to put the fire out? Like they were working on it for quite some time.
They were. So, at the scene, they were dousing the flames, and then it got it to a certain point where it was, able to be moved. And then the cars were moved to the CP rail yard near kind of Quebec Street in Adelaide. We all know
Okay.
that yard very well because of the Adelaide Street underpass that just
Mm-hmm.
opened.
Mm-hmm.
And then fire crews there actually continue to sort of monitor and douse and, for hot spots on the cars. So that
Okay.
was sort of that's where they ended up. But we're talking many, many hours of work here to make sure that they were fully extinguished and, not on fire anymore.
Yeah. And fire crews are pretty impressed by the work of the train crew. Is that right?
Yeah, they were like just a lot of really good reaction and quick thinking here. I think, the fire crews in London were really singing the praises of the train crew because they were really on it. They knew what to do. Every sort of, from what we understand anyway, just, operations were followed. Things were, the way they should have been. So, and
Mhm.
like our fire crews here acted really quickly and they knew what to do to get it under control. And so, just a lot of good, quick thinking all around.
The building that was damaged, what building was that and what was the damage to it?
So the way that it looks, it appears that it's the Drulo building at Waterloo Street and Pall Mall Street. It
Okay.
is sort of close to the tracks if you ever drive down there. And so that appears to be the building. It was right kind of, it would have been a very hot fire. So you
Mm-hmm.
could imagine maybe the damage was from that, but about 10 grand damage was the estimate that the fire department gave of damage to that building.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the investigation. You said that the train company is investigating, or who is investigating now, and who might be
Yeah.
investigating.
So CP confirmed to us that they are taking a look, obviously, at what happened. They have obviously very vested interest in knowing what happened and
Hmm.
how it ignited and how their crews sort of and dispatch reacted to it. And there's all kinds of things they can look at. The expert I was speaking to yesterday said they can look at, communications between train dispatch and the conductor, and they can look at, there's little software on the computer on the locomotives that can kind of tell, and some of them even have cameras and things that can kind of, they can study. So there's lots of things
Mm.
there, and they can interview witnesses too and other things like that. It's not immediately clear to us yet, and they haven't gotten back to me whether the Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be investigating. Now that's an independent agency that investigates all kinds of, rail and pipeline and airplane incidents and accidents. It's not an automatic thing though that they'll absolutely be investigating this and doing a report. The expert I was speaking to yesterday had said, if there's a reason to, if they think that, there's a potential to make it, broader, or that this incident has bigger implications than just being a fire, a one-off in a city, then maybe they will.
Mhm.
That report would take a long time, though. I just know from even other times we've reported on Transportation Safety Board reports we're talking months, sometimes even more than a year before we get any details there, but they're very thorough investigations.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, they would be. Well, there's still lots of questions, of course. So where
Yeah.
do we go from here? Like, what are the next steps? What kinds of things are we waiting for now?
Yeah, so we'll certainly be asking CP, what they find, and
Yeah.
if there's any sort of thing there. It's possible if it was arson or vandalism, there
Mm,
could be criminal charges. So we'll certainly be looking into that as well. But really, I think just people want to know why it happened, how it happened,
mhm.
and if indeed there is something that we can learn from this fire to prevent similar ones in the future. I think that's something Londoners would like to know as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you, Jen. We're going to watch your reporting on this absolutely at lfpress.com. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.